Hi, it's John Boot, and today's lesson is on Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes from the Trinity College London Grade 1 Drums Rock and Pop syllabus. So this is one of the White Stripes' most successful songs, and it's from their fourth album Elephant, which was released in 2003. So let's take a look at the sheet music. So we've got Seven Nation Army written in the top left corner, which is the title of the song. And then looking beneath that, we've got intro written there, just letting us know the first section of the song we're going to play is the intro. And then we've got the style, which is rock. So we're playing a rock track. And next to that, we've got the tempo. So it says a crotchet or a quarter note equals 120. So that's telling you the tempo is 120 beats per minute, and a beat is a crotchet. Okay, so the beat of the music that you're going to feel, there's going to be 120 of them every minute. Okay, so there's going to be 2 beats every second. So the tempo is quite fast for this song. And like I said, those beats that you're hearing and feeling are crotchets or quarter notes. Okay, so that's what that part's telling you. And then next to that, it says 2 bars counting, written there in brackets. So that's just telling you that when you play this with a backing track, so when you play this notation with a backing track, you're going to hear 2 bars of counting. So you'll hear 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And remember, that's just not counting you down into the start of the song. It's also letting you hear the tempo, so you can feel the tempo. So when you listen to the counting, not only are you being counted into the start, but you're also hearing the tempo. So when you start playing, you come in at the correct tempo. And then we've got our first bar of music there. So beneath that information, you've got your first bar, and on the stave there, you can see the percussion clef or the neutral clef, which just tells you that on this stave you're going to have drum notation. And then next to that, you've got the time signature of the song, which is 4/4. So we've got a 4 at the top, which tells you there's 4 beats in the bar, which means you just count up to 4 for each bar. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the 4 at the bottom of the time signature tells you that a quarter note or a crotchet lasts a beat. So those beats you're feeling and counting, when you count up to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, they are quarter notes or crotchets, okay? So then we come into our first bar. So you can see there's a big thick black line covering the whole bar there. So it's just one bar on the top line of the piece, and above that thick line you can see the number 4. So that thick line is a multi-bar rest. So that's just what we use when we rest for more than one bar. And then all we do is put the number of how many bars we need to rest for above that line. So in this case, you've got a 4 above the line, which just tells you that you rest for 4 bars. So when we're counted in to start this piece, the drummer just has to rest for 4 bars. So we just count 1, 2, 3, 4, second bar, 2, 3, 4, third bar, 2, 3, 4, fourth bar, 2, 3, 4. So we rest for 4 bars. And then at the end of that line, or that bar, because there's only one bar on the line, we can see there's a double bar line there, which tells you there's a musical change coming. And it also says, I'm gonna fight, above the bar there at the end of the line. And that's just the lyrics. So you'll hear those lyrics at that point. So it's just letting you know, well, it's just giving you a kind of cue to know where you are. So you'll hear those lyrics and that will take you into the next line. Okay, so those lyrics are like a pickup into the next bar, or an anacrusis into the next bar. Okay, so if we come into the next line, you can see it says verse above the first bar of line 2. So that's telling you the new musical section you've come on to is the verse. And then at the start of that bar, we've got a start repeat marking, okay, an open repeat marking, which means we need to repeat something from this point. All right, so there's going to be a phrase of music that repeats from this point, from this open repeat marking. So looking at that first bar of notation, you've got crotchets or quarter notes on the floor tom, and you've also got crotchets or quarter notes on the bass drum. So they're going to be played together. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 with the right hand on the floor tom, and you've also got 1, 2, 3, 4 on the bass drum. So you're going to hit those 2 drums together at the exact same time, and like I said, they're on they're played as quarter notes or crotchets, so it's just going to land right on the beat. So on the 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's our first drum part. So it's kind of just giving you a feel for the time there. It's just sort of keeping time. And beneath the bar, you can see there's a dynamic mark in there. So there's an MF, which is short for mezzo forte, which means half loud, all right, or medium loud or moderately loud. So that needs to be played about normal playing level. Okay, so not too quiet, not too loud, just right at the sort of midpoint there, which is kind of, like I said, it's kind of like the normal level of sound. So let's just try just playing that part, just hitting those downbeats, getting used to hitting those two drums right at the same time, so right in sync. Okay, and we'll try that for 4 bars at the song tempo, 120 beats per minute. So looking at bar 2 of that line, you've got a 1 bar repeat symbol. So that just means repeat the previous bar. So we play that bass drum and floor tom part again, and then for bars 3 and 4, you've also got 1 bar repeat symbols. So you play that bass drum and floor tom part another 2 times. So you've got bar 1 where the bass drum and floor tom part is notated, bar 2 is repeating it, bar 3 is repeating it, and bar 4 is also repeating it. So you play it 4 times. Now, if you look above the last 1 bar repeat symbol on that line, so on the last bar of that line, you can see there's a number 4 there written in brackets. So we have those when we have a few 1 bar repeat symbols. So a lot of the time we repeat something a few times, and we see a lot of those 1 bar repeat symbols. Now, as musicians, we play 4 bar phrases quite a lot, and we tend to feel those four bar phrases. So if we play something a few times, we can feel it's the 4th time of playing it. Okay, so that number 4 is just there so you can follow where you are a bit easier. Okay, so if you can see there's 3 1 bar repeats on that line, you might sort of think, oh, which repeat am I on? Is it the 2nd one, the 3rd one, or am I on the 4th one? So like I said, you should feel you're on that 4th time of playing it, so you can just look at the music, see that number 4, and know where you are. Okay, so it's just there to keep count of those 1 bar repeats. And then after that 1 bar repeat, that last 1 bar repeat on the line, you can see there's an end repeat symbol or a close repeat symbol. So that is the end of the repeated phrase. So we saw the start repeat symbol or the open repeat symbol at the start of the line. So that's where you repeat from. And then you've got the close repeat symbol or the end repeat symbol at the end of the line. And that's what you repeat till. Okay, so we play that bass and a floor tom part. There's a 1 bar repeat, so we play it again. There's a 1 bar repeat again, so we play it again. There's another 1 bar repeat, so we play it again. And then we've got that end repeat symbol, which means we go back to the start of the repeated phrase and we play that whole line again. Okay, so whatever's in those repeat markings, we have to repeat. So we play 4 bars for line 2 and then we repeat those 4 bars. Strong backbeat comes in line 3, so just bringing that backbeat nice and strong on the 2 and 4 to give it that groove sound, to hold the song together even more. And that brings us into line 4. So if we look at line 4, we've got quarter notes on the bass drum again, or crotchets on the bass drum. So that's still keeping time on the bass drum. That's constantly going, just keeping time, hitting those downbeats. And then the top rhythm, we've got a crotchet or a quarter note on the crash on the 1, and then we've got quavers or 8th notes on the snare and the floor tom. Okay, so you're going to play those 2 drums together. So you've got 1, and then on the floor and the snare drum you've got 2 and 3 and 4 and. So your right hand's going to play on the floor tom, left hand on the snare drum, and like I said, they're going to play in unison, so make sure they're synced up right together. You're hitting them at the same time. So we've got 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and, whilst keeping time, so hitting those 4 on the floor rhythm on the bass drums, hitting those 4 quarter notes or crotchets. All 4 of them downbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4, whilst this plays 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so let's just try playing that bar 4 times through with the metronome. So looking at bar 2 of that line, you can see the notation is the exact same as bar 1. So the reason it's written out again is because the dynamics are different. So if we look beneath bar 1 of that line, so beneath the second beat it says sub P. So sub is short for subito, which means suddenly, and P is short for piano, which means quiet. So you have to suddenly get quiet right at that point on the second beat. Okay, so you hit your crash on beat 1 with a bass drum, and on beat 2 you're suddenly going to drop to quiet. So you're at mezzo forte for the crash, and then beat 2 drop to quiet, so it's suddenly quiet. So it really needs to drop down. And then from that point you can see there's a crescendo from that point you drop to sub P all the way through to the end of the second bar of that line. Okay, so you need to gradually get louder through those 2 bars. So that's why those 2 bars are written out. So there's the same notation in each bar, but dynamically they're different. So obviously there's a crescendo going through those 2 bars. Okay, so let's try that line now with the dynamics. So at the end of that line you can see there's another double bar line which tells you it's the end of the musical section. So what we're going to do now is we're going to play the top 4 lines in time with a metronome, okay? So obviously for the top line you've just got 4 bars of a rest, and then you come in with the verse part of line 2, alright? So we're going to try and play from the top right until the end of the verse. Okay, so let's give that a try with the metronome. And now we're going to play up to the end of the verse with the backing track, okay? So we're going to put it to the music. So remember, you've got that 2-bar counting, which gives you the tempo and counts you into the start of the piece. And then you've got that 4-bar rest, obviously, and the drum part comes in at line 2. All right, so make sure your crotchets or your quarter notes are really solid and in time. Okay, you're really hitting those downbeats, and the bass drum and the floor tom are lined up right together, all right? So really make sure they're in sync. Bringing that backbeat on the snare on 2 and 4 on line 3, so give it that groove sound, and just make sure when you go into line 4, so at bar 13, you hit that crash and then you drop to piano on the next note where you're hitting the floor tom, the bass drum and the snare drum together. Alright, so really drop down to piano, and through those 2 bars at line 4, remember it's a crescendo, so you gradually want to get louder as you go through those 2 bars from that second beat where you drop to sub P. Alright, so sub P, and then we lift it up to the end of that line, okay, so through both bars. Alright, so let's try up until the end of the verse with the backing track.
I'm gonna fight 'em off. A 7-nation army couldn't hold me back. They're gonna rip it off, taking their time right behind my back. And I'm talking to myself at night because I can't forget. Back and forth through my mind behind a cigarette. And the message coming from my eyes says leave it alone.
And now we're coming to line 5, so we're into a new musical section in this line. So it says instrumental refrain above it. So a refrain is similar to like a chorus, so it's a repeated part of the song which has a feel like the chorus. And this is an instrumental refrain, so it's just instrumental, right? There's no lyrics in this part. So it's a repeated part of the song that gives it the chorus feel, but it's just instruments. Okay, so we've got a groove here, we've got a top rhythm of crotchets or quarter notes on the crash cymbal, and then beneath that the bottom rhythm is playing crotchets between the bass drum and snare drum, so they're alternating. So you've got bass drum, snare drum, bass drum, snare drum, 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, it's a crotchet rhythm. So let's try this groove in time with the metronome, and just beneath the bar as well you can see the F there, letting you know that the dynamic for this groove is forte, which means loud. So let's try this groove loud 4 times through with the metronome. And then for bar 2, we've got a 1 bar repeat, so we play that groove again. And then in bar 3, you've got a slightly different groove there. So the first 3 beats are the same, so you still hit that 1, 2, 3, bass and crash, snare and crash, bass and crash. And then you've got a new rhythm on the 4th beat, so you've got an 8th note rest or a quaver rest on the 4, and then you're playing a quaver on 8th note on the and a 4 on the snare. So it's off beat, right? It's not on the beat. So normally our backbeat snare is on the beat, so on the 4. So this time we're shifting it later. So we're going to hit that and a 4. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and. So we rest on the 4, hit the and. 1, 2, 3, and. Okay, so let's just try getting used to that part, because it's quite tricky to hit that and, so we really want to make sure it's right in the middle of that beat. So let's just give that bar a go. So we'll repeat it through, we'll play it 4 times through. And then looking at the last bar of that line, you can see you've got the same bar that you had in the first bar of the line. So it's just that initial crash groove where you hit all the quarter notes. We're hitting all the downbeats with the bass and snare drum alternating. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you've got the first bar where you play the quarter note or crotchet groove, then you repeat that groove, then in the 3rd bar you come into that offbeat note on the snare drum, and then you're back to the initial groove where you hit all the downbeats again. Okay, so you've got a nice little pattern there where you're coming back to the initial groove. So let's just try that whole line in time with the metronome. And that brings us into the last line. So the first 2 bars of the last line are the same as the 2 bars on line 4, but we've got different dynamics, okay? So obviously in line 4, we had that crescendo, but for this line, there's no crescendo, and we're in the same dynamic marking as we had in the previous line, which is forte. Okay, so we're just hitting those same 2 bars that we played, like I said, in line 4, but we're just keeping it all the same dynamic this time, all at forte, and then we finish in the last bar with a crash on the 1 with a bass drum. Okay, and we let that note ring, which is why it's got that loopy line there, that tie line next to it. It's just letting that crash ring. Okay, so let's try the bottom line in time with the metronome. So that's the whole instrumental refrain there. So what we're going to do now is try and play that whole part in time with the metronome. Okay, so we're going to start from line 5. So you've got that crash groove there. Remember, you've got that repeat symbol. So we repeat that whole line. And the tricky part with that line is going from that offbeat snare drum back into on the beat. Okay, so just make sure the transition from bars 3 and 4 in that line is nice and smooth. So you're hitting that and on the and of 4 and bar 3, and you're still hitting that 1 at the start of bar 4. Okay, so you've got to get it and 1 to make sure there's no sort of stutter between those 2 notes. All right, so make sure that's clean. Like I said, repeat that line, and then we come into the last line with crash. Make sure you hold that crash for a crotchet or a quarter note, and then we're on to the 3 parts here for the 2, and we just play quavers with our hands, and we're playing still that crotchet on the bass drum or that quarter note. Okay, so make sure that's really solid, hitting those downbeats, and like I said, the hands are playing those quavers or those 8th notes. Okay, so let's try the whole instrumental refrain in time with the metronome. And remember, the whole instrumental refrain is played at forte, which is loud. And now we're going to play the instrumental refrain in time with the backing track, okay? So we're going to put it to the music. So make sure you come in strong with that crash groove. Obviously you're at forte, so give it a lot of energy, and just make sure it's lining up with those downbeats, all right? So you're really hitting those downbeats, and make sure that offbeats, so that on that upbeat, on the end of 4, on the 3rd bar, make sure you're really hitting that point in the midpoint of the beat, okay? And then when you come back to that one on the next bar, it hasn't thrown your rhythm, okay? So keep that rhythm really strong, and obviously in that last line, you really want to hold those quarter notes on the bass drum and keep those 8th notes nice and even with the hands. Okay, so let's try that section with the backing track.
And the message coming from my eyes says leave it alone.
So now we're going to play the whole piece in time with the backing track. So we're going to put the whole piece with the music. So again, remember you've got that 2-bar counting at the start, and you've got that 4-bar rest before the drum part comes in. Now initially there's no cymbal in the grooves, all right? So just make sure your floor tom and bass drum are really solid and then really hitting those downbeats to keep hold of the song, all right? To really drive those quarter notes. Strong backbeat comes in line 3, so just bringing that backbeat nice and strong on the 2 and 4 to give it that groove sound, to hold the song together even more. And then in line 4, remember you've got that crescendo. So it's really important that you drop suddenly at that sub P part, okay? You really drop and you bring it up through those 2 bars, so you gradually increase to forte to build the energy for the instrumental refrain, okay? Because you come into that crash part, which is played at forte, so it needs to be loud. So that crescendo is really building up the energy to bring you into that crash part. And when we come into that crash part, because we've been building in the energy, just be careful not to speed up. So really keep the rhythm tidy. So this song has got a lot of quarter notes, or crotchets, so there's quite a bit of space between those notes, so just make sure they're really in time and there's no kind of speeding up or slowing down in your playing, okay? Really try and hit those downbeats neatly, and obviously you're finishing with those crotchets or quarter notes on the bass drum and those 8th notes with your hands, or those quavers with your hands on the floor tom and snare drum. Okay, so really try and hold it together and give each part the right energy, and just make sure you're really complementing the music when you're playing it together with the backing track. So let's give the whole track a try now.
I'm gonna fight 'em off. A 7-nation army couldn't hold me back. They're gonna rip it off, taking their time right behind my back. And I'm talking to myself at night because I can't forget. Back and forth through my mind behind a cigarette. And the message coming from my eyes says leave it alone.
So I hope you enjoyed that. It's a great song to play to, a lot of fun. and just make sure when you practice the parts, we obviously played them at song tempo, but just remember that's the target tempo. That's where you eventually want to get these parts to, but spend as much time as you need to at slower tempos to gradually build to that song tempo. So like I said at the start of the lesson, 120 beats per minute is a fast tempo. So honestly, make sure you spend the time getting there comfortably, because you don't want to be rushed. Don't quickly play it at song tempo when you're not ready to, because obviously it's going to rush you. I mean, it's just going to be, well, it's just going to make you all tense and make the drum part sound a bit tight and not as relaxed and nice sounding as it needs to be. Okay, so that's a really important point. Make sure you're comfortable and you gradually increase the tempo to get to that song tempo before you put it with the music. Okay, so have fun with this song, and we'll see you in the next lesson.